1948, January 30, Avro Tudor G, AHNP, Star Tiger lost with 6 crew and 27 passengers, en route from Santa Maria Airport in the Azores to Kindley Field, Bermuda. Star Tiger, registration G, AHNP, was an Avro Tudor Mark IV passenger aircraft owned and operated by British South American Airways, BSAA, which disappeared without a trace over the Atlantic Ocean while on a flight between Santa Maria in the Azores and Bermuda in the early morning of 30th of January 1948. The loss of the aircraft along with that of BSAA, Avro Tudor Star Aerial in 1949 remains unsolved, with the resulting speculation helping to develop the Bermuda Triangle legend. British South American Airways, BSAA, was an airline created by former World War II pilots in an effort to provide service on the previously untapped South American trade and passenger routes. Originally named British Latin American, Blair, it was split off from the British Overseas Airways Corporation to operate its South Atlantic routes. It commenced transatlantic services in March 1946, with a BSAA, Avro Lancastrian making the first operational flight from London's Heathrow Airport. The airline operated mostly Avro aircraft, Yorks, Lancastrians and Tudors, and flew to Bermuda, the West Indies and the western coast of South America. Star Tiger was one of 3 enlarged and improved versions of the Avro Tudor, designated Tudor 4. It had made 11 transatlantic flights, a total of 575 hours flying time, since its initial test flight on 4th of November 1947. On the morning of 28th of January 1948, the crew and passengers boarded Star Tiger at Lisbon only to be forced to return to the airport waiting room when the pilot, Captain Brian W. McMillan, told them that the port inner engine needed some attention. The aircraft took off 2.5 hours later, and made what was intended to be a 75-minute refueling stop at Santa Maria in the Azores. However, the reported weather was so poor that Captain McMillan decided they should stop over until the next day. Of the passengers, 16 were British, 2 were Mexican, 2 were Czech, 1 was Swiss, and 4 were stateless. Of the passengers, 7 were bound for Bermuda, 12 were bound for Kingston, Jamaica, and 6 were bound for Havana, Cuba. The following day, 29th January, Star Tiger took off for the next leg of its flight to Bermuda despite strong winds. McMillan had decided to fly at no more than 2,000 feet, 610 meters, so as to avoid the worst winds. An Avro Lancastrian belonging to BSAA, piloted by Frank Griffin, took off an hour ahead of the Star Tiger, and Griffin had agreed to radio weather information back to Star Tiger. Star Tiger took off at 15:34 and soon after takeoff was lashed by heavy rain and strong winds. At first some 200 miles behind the Lancastrian, McMillan slowly closed the distance between them and both aircraft remained in radio contact with each other and Bermuda. Second pilot aboard the Star Tiger was David Colby DFC, like McMillan a highly experienced pilot and ex-RAF Pathfinder Force squadron leader. By 01:26 on 30th January, after 10 hours in the air, Star Tiger was only 150 miles, 240 kilometers, behind the Lancastrian. The navigator of the Lancastrian managed to fix their position using celestial navigation and found that the winds had blown the aircraft 60 miles, 97 kilometers, off track in the previous hour. By this time, Star Tiger had passed its point of no alternative, at which it could have diverted to Newfoundland, and was committed to remaining on course for Bermuda. At about 0200, Cyril Ellison, Star Tiger's navigator, fixed the aircraft's position and learned that they too had been blown off course and were crabbing away from Bermuda. He gave McMillan a new course which turned the aircraft directly into a gale. However, McMillan still expected to reach Bermuda with at least an hour's worth of fuel remaining upon landing. A merchant ship, SS Troubadour, had reported seeing a low-flying aircraft with lights blinking about halfway between Bermuda and the entrance to Delaware Bay, which meant that if the aircraft was Star Tiger, then it had gone well off course from Bermuda. This alleged sighting occurred about 2 o'clock, Eastern Standard Time, In the morning at 0300, Captain Griffin aboard the Lancastrian amended his ETA from 0356 to 0500, and called Star Tiger to say that he was switching to voice telephony to contact Bermuda Approach Control. Griffin later testified that he heard nothing from Star Tiger to indicate that it was in trouble, and that from then until he touched down at 0411 his own aircraft encountered no turbulence, icing, fog or electrical storms. At 0304 Radio Officer Robert Tuck aboard Star Tiger requested a radio bearing from Bermuda, but the signal was not strong enough to obtain an accurate reading. Tuck repeated the request 11 minutes later, and this time the Bermuda radio operator was able to obtain a bearing of 72 degrees, accurate to within 2 degrees. The Bermuda operator transmitted this information, and Tuck acknowledged receipt at 0317. This was the last communication with the aircraft. The Bermuda operator tried to contact Star Tiger at 0350 and receiving no reply, thought that it had gone over to direct radio contact with Bermuda Approach Control. However, Approach Control reported that this was not the case. The Bermuda radio operator tried at 0405 to contact Star Tiger, again without success, and after trying again at 0440 he declared a state of emergency. He had heard no distress message, and neither had anyone else, even though many receiving stations were listening on Star Tiger's frequency. On 30th of January 1948, a press dispatch reported the plane's loss at 440 miles northeast of Bermuda. The U.S. Air Force personnel operating the airfield immediately organized a rescue effort that lasted for 5 days despite worsening weather. 26 aircraft flew 882 hours in total, and surface craft also conducted a search, but no signs of Star Tiger or her 31 passengers and crew were ever found. On 1st of February 1948, a B-17 search plane reported sighting several boxes and an oil drum 325 miles northwest of Bermuda. It is unknown if this flotsam was connected to the missing plane or not.